chamber, Senate.
The Senate, yeah.
Let's see how it goes with the elections and everything.
We will see. We will have 20-25% of Rassemblement National winning the elections, the European elections.
Welcome, everybody, to our second panel today with my distinguished speakers here on stage and online. We're waiting for the last people to join us here in Munich at the America House. So this panel is on the Weimar Triangle, right? The title is Franco-German and Polish Cooperation in the Shadow of the Ukraine Invasion. So you already see a little bit in the title that we don't only talk about Weimar, so the format that you all know since the end of the Cold War, but we talk about French, German, and Polish cooperation within the framework also of the Weimar Triangle. This panel is incredibly up to date right now, because this week on Wednesday, we had our last meeting on the 22nd of the French, the Polish, and the German foreign and European affairs ministers. And maybe you have listened to what they proposed. And they have a very ambitious agenda for Europe. And they proposed a strong geopolitical EU, a lot of priorities for the upcoming new European term in the area of EU external action, a lot of different priorities for strengthening European security and defense, and also improving, obviously, the EU external action service and coherence, and strengthening the global outreach and support for global public goods, so ranging really from climate action to boosting European defense capabilities and spending, enhancing capability gaps. So all these topics, actually, we also talked about a little bit this morning. We had a fellow session, a workshop on Franco-German cooperation, where we touched upon these questions with our fellows that are here in the context of the Young Security Conference and our 5th edition, the 4th time that we're here at the America House in Munich. And I just once again want to quickly thank our partners that support us here at the America House, and then the Friedrich Naumann Stiftung with Mike Schnierer sitting here in Munich, and Marcus, also from the America House here, and the Franco-German University and our universities, the Paris Cité and the University of the Bundeswehr here in Munich. So all this been said, when we prepared for this panel and this conference, obviously we thought about how can we talk about the Franco-German cooperation right now in the current context. And as you all know, the Weimar Triangle after the Cold War was a unique initiative that should have enhanced cooperation between the three countries, and it didn't happen for various reasons. So this imperative of enhancing diplomatic and defense collaboration, united efforts, actually struggled because of different strategic challenges, strategic cultures, and different visions where actually the security and defense cooperation should go. And then also the UK came along and said, oh no, actually we have a different vision how all this should look like. And the Weimar Plus group after 2011, when the Weimar countries proposed reforms on EU's common security and defense policy, and after the UK stalled these efforts of really giving the Weimar Triangle a little bit more importance and priorities, that it even did establish an EU battle group in 2013, but it didn't saw any action. And then they even briefly engaged with Ukraine in 2013, after 2014, during the Revolution of Dignity. But then it got soon replaced by other formats, such as the Normandy format and the Minsk negotiations. And we will talk about the different threat perceptions of the three countries during our panel. But before I go into all these details, I want to remind you that we have a Slido here on stage, online as well. So if you have any questions that you will have during the panel and pressing priorities that you want to ask our speakers, please log in, and it's under Sli, so sli.do, #YSC 2024. So the fellows here, you also find it in in the LinkedIn group. So we posted also the address for the Slido in the Fellows channel. So I will now introduce our distinguished speakers online and here. And I would like to begin with the speakers online. If we see them, here they are. So Romain and Bart, very nice to see you and to have you here on stage joining us. And I would like to start with a presentation of Romain, because we know each other for a long time now, and he's actually, most importantly, a YSC fellow of the very first YSC conference happening here in Munich at another university. And Romain Le Quiniou is also a co-founder and managing director of Créative, the first think tank in France focusing exclusively on Central and Eastern Europe. You work also as parliamentary advisor in the French Parliament, and you have extensive experience in political parties, capacity building programs with the International Republican Institute in the region. Hi, Romain. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Good afternoon from Paris. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks a lot for the invitation and congratulations for putting all this conference together, and looking forward to the discussion.
Then we have Bart also joining us online. Bart, you're program director at the Warsaw Security Forum, and you're responsible for conceptualizing and managing the agenda of the conference and building relationships with key partners. You also have extensive policy research experience, having worked with the Polanski Foundation, the Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies, and as a strategic policy advisor to the International Center for Ukrainian Victory since the start of the Ukraine war. Thanks for being here, Bart.
Hello. Hello, everyone. I'm actually right now in Bucharest, in Romania, but yes, I will bring Polish voice into the debate, I hope.
Then we have here on stage Denis Kolesnyk. You are an independent analyst and consultant. You specialize in politics, security, and defense in Central and Eastern Europe and in France. You focus on information warfare, foreign malign influence, and you have worked with NATO, the NATO liaison office in Kiev, and you founded InfoOps France to enhance the informational resilience of French society. Welcome, and it's wonderful to have you. That you came from Paris.
Thank you for inviting.
And last but not least, Jochen Kleinschmidt. So, Jochen, you're a lecturer and research associate at the Chair of International Politics at Dresden University of Technology. You have a doctorate here from the LMU in Munich, and you have worked extensively in Latin America and as a visiting fellow at NATO, so the NATO school Oberammergau. Yeah, wonderful. I mean, this is an incredible panel. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So once again, a reminder, if you have any questions, please remind Slido. So the address is sli.do #YSC2024. So we have many questions regarding the current state of affairs and the Weimar Triangle. And I would like to start with a question to you all, very briefly, regarding the Weimar Triangle right now in the context of the current meeting as well, because it is obviously a new hope for collaboration, but for some also, and in light of this criticism, it could also merely be a binding force for the lingering hopes that unite Europeans in this trend of going forward in terms of security and defense. I would start again with Romain, if you want.
Thank you, sure. Thanks a lot for this question. First, if you don't mind, Amélie, I think that we should not talk about hope. I think that Europeans have been dreaming too much over the past few years, and now it's not time to dream or to hope, but to act. And I think that Weimar Triangle can be one of the platforms for action for Europeans, considering that it's basically a minilateral format that is made to basically dynamize, to energize cooperations at the European level. I think that the Weimar Triangle has been working to some extent. I think on the technical level, it was working quite okay. Or at least there was some action that we don't really see. But what is new now probably is that there is a political momentum. And this is why we are talking a lot about Weimar. And I think that this is why the agenda is bigger or more ambitious. And we'll see how it develops. But the good thing is that now there is opportunity because Paris, Warsaw, and Berlin seems to be all the three aligned on the need and on the will, basically, to make Weimar a positive tool for Europe.
Thank you, Romain. And here on stage, what is your opinion? Do you think it's the political momentum? Do you have some...
Yeah, actually, as it has already been said just recently, that the stars have finally aligned, and we have, on one side, we have the understanding, which is in Paris, that partially due to the fact that we were somehow ejected from African countries, and we had to leave the Mali, we had to withdraw the Barkhane operation, and due to some malign influences, for example, coming from the Russian Federation, that are still in the hatred towards the French Republic. First of all, so in my opinion, the President Macron understood that there is always this idea of leading in France and his ambition to lead. And right now there is this opportunity to lead is in Eastern Europe. And France, if we have this agenda for leading, we should be present in Europe. We cannot just disregard because, like maybe 2-3 years ago, France has always been turned to south, like what is happening in the Mediterranean, in Africa, etc., and was somehow disregarding the issues that were on the eastern flank of NATO. But currently it is changing, and it's a huge momentum right now because we have this leadership and the understanding in Paris. Moreover, there were some disputes, I would put it this way, based on the ideological issues between Poland and France and the perception of one another. And right now also is a good momentum because there were elections in Poland and there is a new government in Poland. So there is a way to, as we say, renouer les contacts, so basically to get back again and to see what kind of cooperation can be done, what kind of issues can be achieved. And third issue, and maybe one of the most important ones, is that we have all changed the perception since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Full-scale invasion of Ukraine happened on February 22nd. We understood that there is a real threat in Eastern Europe, and right now it is also the possibility for us to come together and to work together in order to, one, secure our continent, secure European Union, and help the Ukrainians to defend themselves. And it's somehow an issue that brings the possibility for all three countries for a better cooperation, better understanding.
Yeah, I remember Romain and we once met in Paris 5 or 6 years ago, and we complained that France still forgot about the entire region, and we were so upset, and we said, like, this should change immediately, and it did. What do you think, Jochen? What happened to Germany?
What happened to Germany? Well, I think from the German perspective, the Weimar Triangle is something like prefigurative politics, which is to say that's a concept from social movement research where people who want to change overall society get together and sort of build a little example of what things should look like on a more limited scale, right, or minilateral in this case. And that was the original design, I think, that the German policy community liked about the Weimar Triangle, the opportunity to build a certain consensus around certain topics and then have that consensus diffuse throughout the European Union. That's more or less what the function of the Weimar Triangle is for the Berlin policy community. I don't think there are any other hopes still associated with it, like this idea that there would be a German-French engine and now there's another cylinder block which is Polish, or some metaphor like that. I don't think that has happened like that, and also I don't really believe that there was ever a German-French engine that sort of moved the vehicle. Things are more complex than that, and other countries always had more agency than that metaphor would allow. But so there's prefigurative politics, the Weimar Triangle allows those three countries to sort of build a model of what they would like to be a consensus. But, of course, it's not the big countries imposing themselves on the rest of the community, but the other countries still have agency, and if the vision that is transmitted is not appealing, or if the things agreed on are already sort of consensual between everybody, as I think is the case now with the current communique, then the effect will be negligible. And that is, I think, what we're seeing now. So there's a lot of potential. It will remain an interesting tool. It will probably become a vehicle to, especially for Poland, to sort of transmit its views on the eastern flank security situation to Germany and France, which are more hesitant to commit serious capabilities there. Well, Germany has the capabilities, but isn't really serious in terms of the strategic view. France is rapidly evolving, as we just heard, but is still lacking in terms of material commitments. So I think if the Weimar Triangle will be relevant in the current security environment after the full-scale invasion, then it will be something like that, a vehicle for diffusing the eastern flank security interests to the West. That's what I think.
That's your hope. And Bart, what is your hope? And how do you see that hope right now unfolding?
Hi. Once again, thank you very much for the question, because I guess this is actually at the core where we are when it comes to the Weimar Triangle. And I do agree to some extent with what was said by Romain, that we are experiencing right now a political momentum where actually the Weimar Triangle can play the role. This political momentum is very much connected also to the fact that there was a revival, let's say, of Polish politics to some degree, a change in Polish politics, a new government that has a very much pro-European stance, that has the Minister for Foreign Affairs that is actually also capable of conducting the policies on the European level, which is another dimension. Even if you have the pro-European government, but the MFA that is incapable to do it, then you wouldn't achieve that. And with Sikorski, this is a bit different than that. So the revival of Weimar Triangle comes along with also the change in Polish politics. But one big but. I mean, it was established in 1991. Back then, Poland wasn't a member state of neither NATO nor European Union. The economy of Poland was absolutely disproportionate to the economy of France, and it still is to some degree, but of course we were catching up throughout the years, hugely actually catching up, and I can only underline how much actually the country has developed since our membership in the European Union. But it is true that our membership in Weimar Triangle is also the length of it is also actually our gradual, I would say, coming into age, if I may say so. So also Poland as a country that has developed its own view on European policies, its own view where it could actually play a role when it comes to the shaping of the European Union policies. This is something which has changed right now. Not only we are informed enough how to do it on the European Union stage after 20 years of being a member state of the Union, but we also have a very particular cost, which is of course security. And in that very particular cost, we can of course also not only contribute to some policies that are related to that, but maybe even sometimes lead in those issues, since we are credible not only to our European allies, but of course and mainly to our transatlantic allies, which is not necessarily the case in the case of Germany or France at this moment. So so I do understand the necessity or the interest or even the ambition from France, as it was also pointed out by my French colleagues in this panel, to lead Central Eastern Europe. But I'll be very honest to tell you that Central Eastern Europe doesn't need the external leadership. It very much actually the actors from Central Eastern Europe being capable of bringing their cause to their Western European friends and being listened to. And I guess this is actually the cause, and this is actually the platform that the Weimar Triangle can very much be effective in, simply speaking.
Right. So enhancing, giving a new voice. But at the same time also, we see in terms of security and defense that with such a huge, ambitious agenda that, for example, came out this week, it also interferes a little bit into NATO and EU policies to some extent. And there could also be the question of maybe considering this overlapping of interests sometimes, which of these arrangements actually are more effective? What do you think, Jochen?
You're asking whether NATO or the EU is more effective. Well,
and the Weimar Triangle.
Well, I don't consider them alternatives.
Right.
Just as I said, I consider the Weimar Triangle one of several micro communities that do prefigurative politics, such as others would be the Mediterranean states, or another one would be the Visegrad states, and so on and so on. So they are not an alternative grouping to the EU or NATO, but they sort of prefigure certain policy stances and plans that actors seek to establish as consensus. Regarding security policy and military issues, I don't think there is any disagreement right now. Everybody's looking to NATO, and even if Donald Trump will win the elections, we're still going to be looking to NATO because NATO includes Britain. NATO has simply a different grip and connection to the military communities of the member states. So I don't think personally that we're going to see a larger EU role in military affairs, strictly speaking. We might yet see a larger geopolitical role for Europe in terms of industrial policy, in terms of defense industries, in terms of different ways of incentivizing defense spending and so on. So there is a role. But when we look at hardcore military issues which are going to be back at the center of our security agendas, I think that's going to be NATO, and there's going to be, I think, overall less of that haggling over whether it should be NATO or ESDP and so on and so on. That is something that is more or less settled. I don't think we're going to see any fighting about this. Originally, of course, the Weimar Triangle would be an arena where those disputes would be carried out. I'm not seeing it happening now. I'm not seeing it happening in the future, really.
But maybe also we could think about like a Weimar plus in the future, right? Where others, if NATO and Trump's coming back in means something, then it could also maybe reinforce the Weimar Triangle differently, right?
Of course, those would be very interesting scenarios. In that case, I think leadership will simply be acquired by material contributions to dealing with an absolute emergency situation that we'll be dealing with then. I mean, that would really look very different from how it looks now in all aspects.
Right. We'll talk about future scenarios at the end of our discussion in more depth. What do you think, Dennis, regarding EU, NATO, Weimar?
First of all, I would say that those are all complementary issues, but I believe that the future belongs to more like a smaller alliances and more focused alliances, and more efficient alliances. We have this idea, the general idea that we have this Article 5 of the Washington Treaty that guarantees the unavailability of the borders, that in case of an armed aggression, that everybody would come with arms, with tanks, with military equipment to help us. And I'm speaking about whatever country you want of the alliance. But at the same time, we should remember that the Article 5 has never been activated against a powerful, conventional and nuclear state. So what happens if, just saying like this, Russia plays a hybrid scenario in, let's say, Estonia, in Narva? We don't really have a clear response to this. And the issue when, I mean, we may have to discuss about it, but nobody knows how the procedure, what will be the decisions of the states. We have to take into account because Article 5, if you read it, and by the way, the Article 42.7 of the Treaty of European Union, it's not so precise. It's not written that every country should be sending boots on the ground. It says by military means. So, in my opinion, the Weimar Triangle could be potentially, and I would love to see it, and maybe I will talk a bit more about it at the final part of the session, could become actually some kind of an entente, you know, the new entente of Europe, the strong military alliance where we will have France, which is the sole European Union nuclear power. We will have Germany, a strong industrial and economic power, and we will have Poland that by 2035 will have maybe the best armed forces, most strongest armed forces in Europe, and will be able to protect the eastern flank.
Yeah, right. Poland undergoes a lot of development recently, having said that, regarding like institutional overlapping, Bart and Romain, and maybe Bart, you could start regarding the European Union. How do you think right now that the Weimar Triangle is characteristic of decision-making within the EU? Because we see, especially since the war in Ukraine, that we have a lot of small corporations within the EU that do a lot of different types of corporations in the context of security and defense. And do you think the Weimar Triangle is characteristic of this type of decision-making within the EU, of smaller state corporations?
Not necessarily smaller states. We're talking basically about almost the biggest state when it comes to the European Union. I mean, certainly that's a platform for coordination of policies, and the European Union needs that. I mean, during well, I would say since the beginning of the COVID crisis, we have experienced many of those activities on a lower level than only all the member states, and coordination actually between the biggest players that were, simply speaking, leading the policies of the union, and then while forming the core idea, bringing the other partners in. Which is like very natural, and I suspect that we are experiencing or expecting the European Union to only develop into the bigger and bigger. And those are expectations and hopes related especially to Ukraine. Then, of course, those smaller settings of countries that are willing and capable of leading in some policies is something which will be natural, which is already natural. Of course, the success story of Weimar Triangle, currently the revival of Weimar Triangle, is very much connected to security. It has a potential to develop to other sectors, since there are also meetings of the ministers of European affairs. There are also meetings on even the local government level. But let's not fool ourselves. I mean, security is the major issue here. This is actually where the three countries can cooperate closely together and in a very tangible way. However, I mean, Weimar Triangle is nothing that can that can be supplemental to NATO. That is nothing that can be supplemental to the European Union. This is only actually right now a political club of political discussion club, let me put it that way, where you can coordinate some policies. But it is effective and only because of the fact that the three countries are member states of European Union, they are member states of NATO, and that's why the Weimar Triangle is an effective club. I will also be very hesitant to say or to advocate for smaller settings when it comes to the security arrangements. Actually, our strength is in our solidarity, and we should be underlining those elements. European Union doesn't possess the capabilities that the US has. NATO, without the US and Canada, is very short of capabilities that are needed to sustain any kind of Russian potential threat. And our Polish spending on the armed forces will certainly not help the European Union security if the US will decide to go a different way. And any kind of a bilateralization of security arrangements that might be also advocated by some political forces in the US is something that in the longer term will only undermine the European security. So I'm very honest in saying that it is okay that we coordinate our policies via the Weimar Triangle, but this is nothing that can actually be something different, supplemental than only the fact that we are a member state. We as Poland, but all the three countries are member states of NATO and European Union. This is our strength, and we should be doing anything to actually sustain those arrangements.
Right. Thank you very much. Romain, do you have to add something from the French perspective regarding the current EU decision making and to which extent Weimar is characteristic of the current political momentum?
Yes, maybe just a few things. I think that Bart is totally correct when he's mentioning that it's a platform of coordination and it can be something that is facilitating things, but it's not, the only tool that we should have. And I think that what is important also is that it's a platform that helps mutual understanding. And I think that in 2022, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia, what we saw is common declarations. And that was a very minimal thing to do. But then now it's evolving into an ambitious agenda, as we saw in the Weimar meeting in the past few days. And I think that it translates also the slow but progressive understanding from France and Germany on the reality of the situation. And I think that the large-scale invasion proved to many that the Franco-German couple made some strategic mistakes, and more than anything else, I think we're not able together to read the geopolitical situation in Europe and to secure properly Europe. Now we need to react, and it's a bad thing because it's always better to prepare, and it's always better to basically act on your own will. But this is what it is, and we have to face the situation now, and Weimar can be an interesting tool. We have to remind that Weimar is on two levels. There is the technical level, and we can see a proliferation of meetings between ministries, between teams of diplomats, between defense ministries as well. And on the other side, it's about politics. And what is interesting for Weimar is, of course, the importance of the three countries into the European Union. We can say about this in terms of inhabitants, it's more or less 40% of the total of the EU. We can say it on the economies. Germany is the first economy in the EU, France second, Poland is 6, I believe, can be 5. So basically, this is important for that. But it's also important because it's about political balance. I have to remind that now the heads of state of these countries represent the three main political parties at the European Union. And the second is that there is also geographical balance. Once again, 2022 represents the fact that the decision-making in Europe should evolve and include not only France and Germany, but also countries from Central and Eastern Europe who warned for years and years about the danger from Russia. And I think here we will be able to test actually the possibilities of Weimar and the coordination between the two countries when it comes to the new European Commission and who will be at the key posts. Because here there is a big need for the three countries to find some entente and to find some common solutions to make sure that Weimar can be this platform of what we would call in France Europe puissance, so the powerful Europe that will be able to secure France, sorry, that's very French to say, but to secure Europe and to make sure that we are a relevant actor in the 21st century.
Right, yeah, it's a very good keyword, Europe's puissance. When I invert a little bit the cards and look at it a little bit from a negative, critical side, we also read in the news all the time that France and Germany relationship is going through a terrible time because of Macron's apparently increasingly hawkish stance, because of national politics, right, to outmaneuver the growing hard-right opposition, to his minority centrist government right now. And then we have an extremely cautious Berlin with Chancellor Scholz. And then we have the new Donald Tusk, obviously, in Poland that changed a lot of things and altered kind of, or changed a lot the Polish perspective. And this traditionally kind of cornerstone of the Franco-German relationship appears to be stained. So where does Poland fit in here right now? So we have apparently Franco-German tensions. Dennis, what do you think?
Yet again, as I have mentioned at the beginning, that a new government in Poland opens the opportunity for new, let's put it this way, for exploring the ways of renewed cooperation between France and Poland. Given the fact that Poland is on the eastern flank of the European Union, eastern flank of NATO, this country has been actually, and we should remember this because you've just said that France adopted a hawkish stance, but we should remember that Poland is, since, if I'm not mistaken, 2008, was quite, as we would say, hawkish, but at the same time Poland had reason, and I mean, Poland was right about Russia and Russia's imperial ambitions, and here I can even quote Polish national security strategy of 2020, where the biggest threat to Europe was the, and I quote, Russian imperialist ambitions. So Poles were quite sober about it. And in my opinion, first of all, Poland is one of the key countries in Central Eastern Europe. Poland has quite, let's put it this way, Poles, and speaking of war in Ukraine, they have very good people-to-people contacts. They know each other really well, and Poland is a part of the Visegrad 4 group, together with Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Hungary. And in my opinion, Poland can actually bring to hold this discussion as some kind of a new impetus for cooperation. There may be, because we all remember that actually the relations right now, we are talking about the Franco-German couple, and I don't like this word, but prior to this, we had the problem with, for example, these relations, Franco-Polish bilateral relations. And even, if I'm not mistaken, 2016 or 2017, there was no Polish ambassador in Paris. And it was actually due to the fact that there was a problem with the Caracal helicopters issue that somehow spoiled the bilateral relations or participated in it. And in my opinion, right now, we see that first of all, Poland is a country that is trying to arm itself to the teeth, and for the good reason, even though they don't have the necessary industrial capacities, military defense industry capacities to produce the armaments, and even we in Europe, we don't have enough to supply in a short period of time. So they're buying in the United States, they're buying in South Korea by hundreds of units. And they've actually came to France and bought, also placed an order for the Caesar self-propelled howitzers that proved themselves quite effective and efficient in Ukraine. So in my opinion, this new, and let's put it this way, the fact that Paris turns to east and Poland has also this possibility right now due to the, yet again, I'm not saying that the relations were pretty bad under the previous government, but at the same time, right now, when there is a change of government, change of ministers, change of positions, there is always a way to explore new possibilities and new opportunities. And in my opinion, it is this time when we had Poland, who has an update in its political situation, and we have France that turned its head from south to east. It's amazing opportunities that we should not spoil. So, in my opinion, Poland, as a country that understands the neighborhood, as a country that understands Russia. And by the way, something that was bothering me for years, and I believe we've discussed it with Romain as well, back in Paris a few years ago, that when the experts from Central Eastern Europe were coming to Paris, there was no will actually to listen to them, because we always thought that they are somehow anti-Russian, Russophobic, or etc. And I've observed the shift right now after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that the new perception of those experts, the new perception of those countries in Paris, and we are ready to listen to, because though all those experts were saying that Russia is a threat, they were right, and basically we were proven wrong, with our policies. So it's yet again a new opportunity for the enhanced cooperation, for especially the dialogue. Actually, we have to start, and we have the good opportunity to start to listen to each other. And here, Poland actually has been always a voice of Eastern Europe somehow, because Poland, and we remember we were talking about the Weimar Triangle. One of the key ideas of Weimar Triangle is actually to bring back Poland into the political and the political, let's put it this, political home, European political home, and to enhance Polish economy, so help Polish economy to develop, and this has been achieved. So yeah, yet again, in my opinion, I just don't want to repeat myself, but this is a new, not a new age, but new. We can actually start from scratch somehow, given that Poland has new political situation right now, and France has reviewed its foreign policy and security outlook.
I just see that so many questions are coming in via Slido. I thank everybody very much. So I would like to kind of touch upon all these questions bit by bit, because they kind of fit really well into our current discussions and how it goes. And I would like to ask the question of Charlotte. Charlotte asks, trust is important for cooperation. What are Germany and France doing to gain trust in Poland after having ignored Eastern EU security interests for so long? So a little bit connected to what you just said. What do you think, Jochen?
Well, by far not enough. Right? By far not enough. I think the German government in itself is not currently a unitary actor, but as far as defense policy is concerned, and that's the main point of what Poland is asking for, a serious commitment there, this has been monopolized more or less by the Social Democratic Party, which holds the chancellorship and the defense ministry. There is, of course, also considerable differences between the chancellor and his defense minister. The chancellor is always going to win in that, in any dispute there. And the chancellor's approach, I think, is one of decrisification, right? He's trying to communicate to the German population that, yes, there are problems. They are being managed with the famous formula for as long as it takes, which is not a way to approach a war. That's that's how you approach infrastructure policy or something. It's not a strategic mode of thought. We still have not reactivated, for example, the production line for cruise missiles that we have in Germany. That would be an article that would be in urgent need if we actually took seriously the threat from Russia. We have not demonstrated any strategic approach to that issue. We are completely oblivious in German strategic debate to the fact that, hey, Xi Jinping could decide in 5 minutes that actually he's with the Russian autocracy and he could start supplying Chinese munitions, Chinese defense articles to Russia. According to the British defense minister, they are already sort of doing that on probably on a low level, but apparently that has started. That might escalate at any point in time. What are we going to do then, and what are we going to do if Donald Trump gets elected US president and we cannot count on the US anymore in an Article 5 scenario? What then? Germany has given no answers to that. The Chancellor has given no answers to that. I think instinctively the German public has understood that this is not serious crisis leadership. And, the original question was, what are we doing to regain or gain, maybe we should say, the trust of Poland? No, we're not doing that. And they would be idiots if they trusted German leadership in this situation. I mean, look at the way that...
Good point.
Look at the way we go about the business of buying tanks, right? Very elementary defense article. Poland goes, looks on the world market, where can we quickly get enough functional main battle tanks to kill Russians should the need arise, right? In a very blunt way, I'm saying this. The Germans and also the French, like, let's not leave, the French are not exemplary in this, and the Germans and the French are basically doing industrial policy, going out there and trying to define what kind of main battle tank are they going to use, starting in, 2040, something like that. I mean, from the nature of combat that we're seeing in Ukraine, we don't even know if we're going to have main battle tanks anymore in the near future. Making plans for having a main battle tank in 2040 or 35, I forgot, but like in the midterm future in any case, that is not a realistic approach to those issues. That has been known for a long time. There was a department in the German Defense Ministry, then under General Leidenberger, which had a fantastic 3-part study on the future character of warfare. It was published in 2017. It was taken offline pretty quickly because it was apparently too revolutionary for the German defense establishment or some such thing. But it was a fantastic study which more or less described the way the way of warfare that we are observing now in Ukraine. And why were we not planning for this and actually acting upon those plans in 2017? Actually, why weren't we doing that starting in 2014 when we already had, we had good reasons actually already in 2008.
Right.
So, we're still not serious. We're not dealing with any of those problems. Germany is probably worst. I think at least the current French president has understood that we're looking at a serious problem that might have to be approached strategically. Okay. Germany has, as Dennis said, it has all those fantastic industrial possibilities. It actually, for reasons unrelated to its defense policy, has a fairly good defense industry, which we should be mobilizing, which we should actually get going in order to mass produce articles that we will eventually need should the situation escalate. And that is not impossible. That is, in fact, something that is being seen as increasingly likely by anybody who deals with Russia. So, no.
Right.
Right?
We have a no. We have a clear no. Yeah. Another question, when we look at very future scenarios happening maybe very soon, Romain, if I can ask you, somebody's asking about the rise of the Rassemblement National in France and what you just mentioned at the beginning and the next presidential elections that we're all awaiting. And what do you think are kind of the impact? What could be the impacts? What do you think are the worst fears when you think about the French future elections?
Yeah, I can answer that, but I think that I need also to come back a little bit to the former question to answer this. And I think when it comes to trust, France has done a bit, but frankly speaking, I will join our two guests here. I'm pessimistic about this because it's not enough. And I think first, basically, France has missed 2022 as an opportunity, and slowly, then in 2023, started to change and to adapt its discourse. And I think that Bratislava's speech is an example of this, that basically President Macron tried to, by symbolism, by symbolical expressions, try to get the attention of Central Eastern European countries. I think it was a success, but it's far from enough. At the moment, I think that after the speech of Bratislava, there was this common trend in some French places that we start to get the trust of Central Eastern Europeans, that now France is more trusted than the Germans, or things like this. And I think it's profoundly wrong. First, look at the Kiel Institute ranking. Of course, this is controversial because numbers are different according to different sources, but still there is a trend. France and Germany are nowhere in the top 5 if you look at the ranking by GDP, and that's a shame, and that's not possible if we have a war on our continent. So on this, I'm a bit perplexed, because basically France has changed its discourse, and I think this is a great thing. I even think that the declaration of President Macron not excluding troops on the ground is even much more powerful than Bratislava's speech by far, because most of the countries in the region acknowledge this, and they are happy that President Macron say that, because basically the reality is the following. We cannot exclude that we will send boots on the ground, but there's our talks. If you want to put concrete actions, then you need to send large and extensive military brigades of France in Central Eastern European territories on the eastern flank. One possibility, for example, is Romania. France has increased its presence, military presence in Romania, but it's not a presence that is designed for an action on the ground if we need to do so in a few hours. So this is something that we should take care into consideration. Problem of France is that we have two structural problems today. First one is money. We have much difficulties at the financial level, and it will limit our actions and limit our possibilities. Second is definitely politics. I think that we should not even talk about 2027. If in 2 weeks Macron is losing by 15 points to Jordan Bardella, so the National Rally, the extreme right, pro-Russian, I need to remind this because people have tendency to forget that. The National Rally is a pro-Russian political party. If they lose by 15 points, this is the end of any ambition for France to be, this kind of new state that is able to understand Central and Eastern Europe, that is able basically to complement the efforts of security, because people in this region and governments in this region will basically put the hypothesis that Le Pen will take over in 2027. And this is not something you do. You don't build relation with a state where the next president and or the next prime minister is a pro-Russian political agent.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Romain. Bart, regarding the question of, do you want to add something regarding the question of trust toward Poland, and how do you perceive that right now, also in the current context of the elections?
Certainly. Look, Józef Piłsudski, so the founder of the modern, let's say, state of Poland, once said that when they called him Russophobic, and that was the beginning of the 20th century, he always tends to reply that he's not phobic, because that means that he's afraid of Russians. It's only about the realism that we share here in Poland for centuries, because when you look at an average period of war between Poland and Russia since the 16th century, 25 years. Right now we are living through the longest period because of the nature of the war. It has changed. Possibly if it hadn't changed, then we would be in a different state right now when it comes to the war in Ukraine and our engagement. So those are certainly the elements that define our strategic view of Russia, but also our strategic policies versus Russia and our strategic stance versus Russia. We trust the countries that have, I would say, preserved the strategic approach towards conducting the security policies that are based not only on words, but also on actions. And those two examples, if I may say so, are actually the US and the UK. Britain also has a lot of problems related to the state of the armed forces currently, which was revealed during this government. There was a lot of discussions around that subject, even among the also in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. But it has never prevented the UK to be a very first of all, crystal clear on where their priorities are when it comes to Russia. And secondly, being engaged from the day one or even day zero when it comes to the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, or even before that, being present in Poland when we were targeted by the hybrid attacks from the Belarusian territory with the usage of the migration flows. So this pretty much tells you and shows you how much certain countries can actually be active. They can present their the strategic approach towards the hostile actors that are currently also precisely in the Kremlin, and what kind of trust they can actually gain in Central and Eastern Europe, not only in Poland. I do understand that the words of President Macron. I'm super happy with the fact that he has changed his view when it comes to the engagement with Russia. But what I am saying currently is that both Germany and France, unfortunately, they need to go through what I would call the second Zeitenwende. If we say that the first Zeitenwende was the realization of the fact that the times we're living through are the times that define or change the reality of how we conduct our security policy. In my opinion, the second Zeitenwende is the realization of the fact that there is no way back to the relationship with Russia as it was prior to 2022. And if we all realize in European Union and in NATO that this is the completely different world that we're living through right now, then the end game for this war will be also completely different in our view. In my very opinion, we are already actually preparing for a second Cold War scenario after the very hot war that we are experiencing right now in Ukraine will stop, that way or the other. But the countries such as Poland are already targeted by cyber attacks. They're already targeted by sabotage activities, by espionage coming from Russia. And this is a very kinetic, not only a hybrid threat, to be honest, that we are living through right now. Therefore, a different stance, a different way of thinking about the threat that is coming from the east. What I'm advocating here right now, and I would say that this is probably the point of view of all of the Polish society, not only the ones that support one party or the other party, because this is like something which is completely multi-partisan or bipartisan in Poland. It is the fact that we have to realize that the threat is here. It is not in years to come. It is here, and we have to be prepared right now, which means that the time that we are living through is precisely what Prime Minister Tusk has said, the pre-war times. If we realize that we are living through the pre-war times, our activity, our point of view will be completely different, as it will be also, or precisely put it that way, formed by the very Roman expression, civis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, you have to prepare for war. And I wish that actually the German society, the French society, will also come to this point of reckoning not only the political elites of those countries, but also on the society level.
All right. Applause for you here in Munich. Absolutely. I mean, the societal shift has to happen, and people definitely should realize that that maybe the Cold War never ended as well. So, but considering the many questions that we receive and also the three big questions that we have for our panel today, I'd like to ask you two short questions. If you can really try to work out a little bit the different perspectives regarding the three different national developments, then we can go to our big questions regarding future scenarios. And I will try to answer some of the questions in here as well afterwards that I received through Slido. Going back to really the question of the different perspectives, Poland, Germany, France, where do you think are the most critical, crucially difficult problems right now that we face in terms of security and defense cooperation in the short term?
Okay, first of all, I would say that we were talking about actually trust, and Polish colleagues said that we should all understand that if you want peace, you should prepare for war. It's exactly completely right. At the same time, I believe that geography plays a role in the perception of things and perception of threats. When I was in Estonia, like 60 kilometers from the Russian border, I literally understood that if something goes wrong, the Russian tanks can be here in a few hours. When I'm sitting in Paris, I understand that we are quite, there's a quite distance between us, and it's not a plausible scenario. Having said this, in my opinion, there is the perception of threat. It's one of the key problems. Poles were completely right about the perception of threat. In France, we were mostly focused on the Sahel region for things that mattered to us, and it was mostly the terrorism threat, because the terrorism threat also came from partially from those regions, unfortunately, and that's why one of the reasons when we went there to fight against the terrorism. So in my opinion, it's threat perception. The second point, I would say, the biggest problems differentiating these three countries is the decision making. If, for example, we want to, I don't know, sell arms or send arms somewhere to Ukraine, for example, in France it's quite easy. It's basically the president who decides. If you're talking about Poland, it becomes a bit more complicated, but they have the political will. And when we come to Germany, it's a completely different thing, and maybe we'll elaborate on it. You have the Bundestag, the Chancellor cannot just decide that he wants to send such weapons, and it is done. So two issues, and the third issue, in my opinion, is the, let's put it this way, disproportions in terms of industry. For example, I would say defense industry, yes? If Germany can produce tanks, in France cannot produce tanks right now. In France, we even have no longer the production of the famous FAMAS rifles, and we've bought the Jaques-Apke from Germany, and right now we are negotiating the construction of small arms and munitions with the Belgians. So I would say that the also this, and this shapes the approach. For example, if France always insisted that we should be buying European, Poles went elsewhere and bought what was really available and quickly delivered. So I mean, and it all actually comes from the threat perception. In my opinion, the threat perception is something that all three countries should be working on, and let's put it this way, we should all understand, France and Germany, because Poles understand it really well, that there is a threat, the Russian threat, it's real, it's here, and when all three countries have this clear understanding, maybe things will be moving quicker. And actually, a word on the on trust. I would like to go in defense of France a bit, because we are often criticized that we didn't send enough to Ukraine in terms of arms. But I would say that when the war, when the Russian invasion happened in Ukraine, there were we've checked the stocks of munition, and we found out that we don't really have much, for example, shells to send. If we send it, we will have nothing at all. So it also points out the problem of the rose glasses we had regarding the, yet again, threat perception, and Russia wasn't perceived as a threat.
Right, right. Question of industrial capabilities, for sure. So trust, threat perception, decision-making, and the question of the disproportionate defense industry. how do you think, what would you add to that? If you could do a priority list of the 3 most difficult questions that keep you awake in the night.
That keep me awake at night, absolutely. I would be very close to Dennis. Like, if I had to go through those points for Germany, I think I would prioritize the decision-making aspect. And I would say it's not actually that much about awareness in society. German society actually has learned a bit. And if you look at opinion polls, like 2/3 of Germans want to see continued military support of Ukraine, like 1/3 even wants to increase the military support of Ukraine, which is pretty good numbers for a society that is considered to be so post-heroic and everything. The real problem, I think, are the 2 big political parties, the so-called Volksparteien, in the SPD and the CDU-CSU, which are responsive not so much to public opinion, actually, but to their own membership. And their own membership, what we're seeing there is a demographic on average of 60 years of age. And we're literally talking about retirement homes, basically, in terms of their membership. Their agility to adapt to a new situation is very, very low, and you see this tendency, you see it very clearly with Chancellor Scholz, this tendency towards a therapeutic politics that tries to suggests to that demographic that, hey, there's not really a crisis, we're really handling the situation very well, and so on and so on. That is lethal in terms of both taking the actual decisions that we would need to mobilize the actual considerable potential that is there in terms of the defense industry. And that's also, of course, bad in terms of building trust. So, and if you look, the 2 non-big member parties, the Greens and the FDP, they have been much more agile in terms of getting out of the post-heroic, post-Cold War mindset and adopting a more combative, more security-minded attitude, but they're not going to run the country, right? So that, I would say, in a nutshell, is the main problem we're facing in Germany. And then, of course, you can talk about concrete capabilities, concrete capacities that we should deliver to Ukraine. There's many things that, I mean, the easiest way to deal with the situation is to reduce the strength of the enemy now, where he's already fighting. All right, yeah.
I just wanted to just pick up very quickly a question from the audience regarding the defense industry cooperation. So could the Weimar Triangle play a leading role in here, right? That's exactly a little bit that, I mean.
I'm not seeing it. First of all, right. The Poles already have their own strategy, which is based on cooperation with mostly extra-European actors to deliver capabilities that are needed now, or in very short order, and that's what they're doing, and they're doing that for their survival, and they're not going to trust Germany or France to deliver on anything. Then defense industry cooperation is difficult enough already between France and Germany. There was a very strong criticism recently delivered by the French against German defense procurement attitudes. It sounds surprisingly like German criticism of French defense procurement decisions. Both may be entirely correct about each other, personally, I believe. But the unreality of discussing, for example, what kind of tank are we going to use in 2040, the entire idea, if you look at how this 100 billion euro package is being spent in Germany, well, we're buying this Arrow 3 system from Israel that is a ballistic missile defense system that is able to defend very well, apparently, against missiles which Russia does not possess, because those are intermediate range missiles that were prohibited by the Cold War era treaty. They may acquire those missiles in the future, but it's not solving a problem that we have now. And in reality, I suspect that we are making spending decisions like that because we have offset duties from earlier defense deals that we made with Israel. The Israeli Navy is mostly equipped by German shipyards, and naval shipbuilding is expensive, and so we have offset commitments, which means that we have to spend certain amounts of money to Israeli defense companies, so we're buying Arrow 3, which is not solving any strategic problem.
Right.
But it's there, it looks nice. I don't know, if anybody has knowledge beyond that about this purchase, then please give it to me. But I'm not seeing anything in public or expert discourse in Germany that would legitimize that decision. I could go on about those helicopters that we're buying as combat helicopters, except they're actually not combat helicopters, but they're essentially the same helicopter that the ADAC flies, you know, those yellow rescue helicopters. Those are not combat helicopters, and calling them that is not making that purchase more credible. I'm sorry, I could go on for a long time.
I see.
You see where the problem is.
Yeah. Many
It's
things
not
that
serious.
keep you awake in the night. Yeah, many things. A part of trust, threat perception, decision making. Very quickly, Bart and Romain, what keeps you awake in the night when you think of if you have maybe some other aspects to add regarding the different perspectives, where do you think are the most significant differences in positions right now? Bart? We don't hear you. You're silent.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
Production, that is obvious. But one thing that I would actually pinch to the intervention of our German colleague. Yes, I do understand that this is a matter of actually political issue right now also in Germany, that certain political parties or groups within the parties rather actually are more or less pacifistic when it comes to some approaches, and society as such actually supports the effort of Europe to deliver more, Ukraine, etc., etc. This is perfect, but this is not enough for one particular reason, because it is very easy to fight with other nations' people. You know, in the end, it is easy to realize or to support the war that is not being fought on your territory nor with your people. What we are talking right now also is to understand or to actually to convince the people of NATO member states that it is actually worth dying for European way of life, that it is worth dying for security of our own countries. This is the question that keeps me at night, actually, whether if the Germans are ready to die for Germany, if they are ready to die for Poland, if they are ready to die for Estonia, that would be a question that actually will keep me awake at night if I want to be provocative right now at this part of the discussion.
Very good, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we all keep awake because of that problem, that we don't know who would be ready to die for French or Germans or Polish if we're not French or Polish or Germans. And in Europe, obviously, in general, I'm thinking back to your intervention when you said before threat perceptions, right? And we could also look at the EU, and Spain is so wide, like it's just incredible, the distance of threat perceptions when we compare it to the rest of the countries, for example. But definitely there are many divisions regarding that. Romain, would you like to add something to
maybe a few things which I think are a bit related as well, but I think first is that we are late, and we have to reckon, and I think that some of the decision makers reckoned it, is that one of the reasons why 2 years after the full-scale invasion, the situation is rather dramatic for Ukraine is also our responsibility. We were not fast enough since 2022, not fast enough since 2014, to be very honest, and we can even enlarge the focus because we haven't prepared ourselves, we haven't prepared our societies to face Russia. which is an existential problem, which is an existential threat, not only for Eastern flank countries. Let's be honest. So that's the problem, and this is why we have so many problems when it comes to industrial power. We did not prepare for that. We announced in 2022 that we were turning into war industry or into war economy. We have not. We might start little by little. When will be the result? Will it be before a dramatic fall of Ukraine? We cannot even accept the hypothesis. And my problem is that we basically we were just resigned about this possibility because we didn't face the reality of the tragedy, and that's a problem. I think that the second problem is linked is that we are not war-oriented, and I'm not speaking just here about our economies. I'm speaking also about our societies, and I think that it's linked to the argument of Bart. We need to put money in our defense and in our security capacities. Will the people? I'm not just talking about French people from the south of France ready to die in Narva or something like this. I'm just saying some French ordinary citizen, ready or not, to put more money on our defense and security, collective one that is benefiting to French people, because we will have to make some decision making. And it means that French citizens and other EU citizens will accept to put more money. And it means to slash some money on other things. And I'm referring here to our way of life, Are we ready to protect our way of life by accepting some changes? And I'm not sure. And this is a big concern I have today. Our society are not ready. And the problem is that our societies are not resilient to this information, which will fuel again some debate, polarization, and things like this, which are detrimental to our reactivity. And last but not least, we are talking just about Russia on the eastern flank. Russia is not just on the eastern flank, and it's creating problems in different regions, which are in our neighborhood, from Africa to South Caucasus to the Middle East, to the Arctic region. This is a full arc of security threats. And we are not ready for this. We don't have the capacities. We don't have the strategic thinking, because once again, we are reacting to the most urgent, and this is normal, security threat, which is the Russian advances in Ukraine. But we are not preparing for other theaters. We don't have the capacities and the strategies. And I'm just mentioning Russia here. We have China, which is destabilizing a few other parts in the world, and we need to be ready on all fronts. We need Europe puissance, if I want to bring back this concept, to be able to make sure that our model of liberal democracies will survive in the 21st century. This is what we are talking about. And I don't think that we, politicians, policymakers, business communities, and more than anything else, citizens, especially in Western Europe, we have not understood that. And we need to understand it as soon as possible. If not, we will have big problems.
Thank you, Romain. I have one important question on Slido, but I would also like to call again our audience here. If somebody did not raise a question on Slido, please present yourself shortly and very short, brief question. And if we can reply here maybe in 1 minute each, that would be great. And then we go over to our last and big questions regarding the future scenarios.
Right. So my name is Katja. I'm gonna briefly state my question because you already actually touched upon this very important topics, but right at the end, so I would have loved it actually in the beginning, which one comes about the Polish revival, and not only Poland, but also German and even French revival of the mandatory military service, because we speak about society, we speak about having or increasing our capacity, but it also entails the human capacity and the human capital to also increase our numbers in the military, right? And these numbers are actually pretty much decreasing. And it relates to the increase of capabilities of tanks, and we discussed this with Dennis as well. I mean, we are purchasing a lot of tanks, we're purchasing a lot of airplanes, and whatever, but we don't have men to operate or women to operate these weapon systems, right? My other question was more related to the nuclear question, so I didn't hear anything about the nuclear question. And Poland, I mean, wanting or not wanting, actually said that they wanted to deploy this nuclear capacity to their territories. And to me, the Weimar Triangle is the perfect way to actually come to a closed kind of agreement, or at least the conversation that otherwise wouldn't take place outside NATO. So I would like to hear your intake on this one. And yeah, well, I had a little bit more comments on this, but I think we can wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we have, if there's somebody else in the room, we have a second question.
Thank you, and thank you to our panelists for a very insightful discussion. My name is Romain. I'm policy analyst with the European Policy Center in Brussels, and I come from Slovakia. And I would have a bit of a, I don't think it's that a provocative question, but let's say so. I mean, coming from Central and Eastern Europe, we used to have this perception of France as a country that ignores us and that we don't really have an interlocutor in Paris. And now, after Macron's French speech and also his initiative to boost France's role in defense of the NATO's eastern flank, we feel, okay, now France understands us. But I think security relationships are two-way streets. So do you think that in Central and Eastern Europe we understand the threats that France faces? Of course, we both face Russia, but of course there are threats that like Islamic terrorism or threats coming from Sahel that France also, I think, has on their radar and haven't disappeared completely. So do you think there is something the Weimar Triangle can help France with, and that Central and Eastern Europe is attuned more also to French security needs? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, lots of questions. Who wants to start? Maybe with the last question regarding French threat perceptions? Dennis?
Yeah, actually it's a very good question, and it was the part of the discussions maybe 5-6 years ago that especially when the relations between France and Poland were not on a good note, I would say. And indeed, when Central Eastern Europe wants France to be more engaged or more committed, let's put it this way, it would be logical to show that Central Eastern European countries are also interested by the issues that bothers France. For instance, in Poland, if I'm not mistaken, there were, maybe I'm a bit mistaken, but you can check the data online. If I'm not mistaken, so there was zero Islamist terrorist attacks in Poland since maybe 1991, or since when they started to track these issues. While in France, Islamic terrorism is a huge threat, and we all remember 2015 Bataclan terrorist attack. Many actually terrorist attacks are also avoided on the French soil, and nobody knows about it because nobody publishes this information. And issue is, yet again, you've reasoned that this is a very important issue, and I believe that if we had this, like as you've said, the two-way street approach. So, for example, I understand that maybe Slovakia has lesser capabilities, or Hungary or Czech Republic, but if I'm not mistaken, Czechs actually were with us in the Sahel, if I'm not mistaken. It's also to verify. So to say that back then, also in 2015-16, not only the terrorism, but also there was this idea of, you remember, redistribution of Syrian refugees and welcoming Syrian refugees, and we remember that Poland adopted quite a stance on this issue, and for instance, some kind of a compromise could have been found that would be perceived as a goodwill from Warsaw. It would be perceived in Paris and Berlin, but at the same time, it didn't happen. So I mean, there are obviously things that Central Eastern Europe can also do to show some interest in French threats that France faces, but at the same time, Sahel is almost the end actually for us, because recently it was Chad, and there are only a few countries, let's put it this way, friendly countries remain, maybe Senegal and some others. So yeah, it's a very good question, and it should be every capital in Central Eastern Europe should ask itself about.
Thank you so much. So regarding the nuclear question, because also we got the nuclear question on Slido, who wants to respond to that? question on Slido was that the question about Germany having a nuclear bomb has been raised multiple times. However, I heard Poland would never agree to this because of history. And I would maybe bridge it to the other question on nuclear capabilities and the Weimar configuration. So that's a little bit who wants to tap into the nuclear.
The nuclear.
Can I add something to that in a second? Maybe after the German colleague.
Sorry?
I said if I may comment on that after the German colleague as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, Germany has, hypothetically, a small number of nuclear gravity bombs in Büchel as a part of the NATO nuclear sharing agreement, right? So there's something that we actually do have, even though it's very low-key, but it is there. It is a factor. It would be a factor in any Russian consideration to commit to an act of aggression or not. Of course, Poland wants into that situation as well. They want to be a part of a similar agreement and are acquiring the aircraft which will immediately enable them basically to become a part of such an arrangement. And I think it would be in the interest of the United States to actually expedite that solution and bring in Poland to a nuclear sharing agreement simply because the necessity is there. A certain capability deployed there would have a stabilizing influence on the eastern flank, especially since, as we just discussed, the ability to conventionally deter might be at risk in certain scenarios.
Right.
And it would also be in the interest of the United States because if they do not commit to such a course, then the question will arise at some point if transatlantic solidarity is ever in question because of election of Trump or any such scenario, then we might see a much more dangerous, much more escalatory course towards the independent acquisition of nuclear capability by, for example, Poland or Sweden, which had a very advanced nuclear bomb program back in the 50s and perhaps even 60s, I'm not sure, or perhaps even by Ukraine, which obviously has the highest degree of legitimacy for saying, okay, we're acquiring this capability now because we were brutally invaded by a great power operating behind a nuclear threat, right? So that is very much a situation that should be addressed seriously. German discussions about a nuclear bomb were probably not part of that serious discussion which needs to take place now, but at least the taboo was sort of attacked in a way, and perhaps this conversation can be had now. We definitely should have this conversation on an alliance basis, because if we don't, then there might be some more dangerous, more runaway type situation of states acquiring a nuclear capability independently.
Bart, what did you want to add? There was also the question of the Polish-US nuclear sharing program on Slido. So
yes, because this has become also a political issue recently in Poland. So first of all, as to the assumption that Poland will be afraid or against Germany acquiring the nuclear capabilities or nuclear bomb, I mean, Sikorski once said, and I can only actually repeat that because it is resonating in Poland from times to times. We are way more afraid of Germany not being capable of conducting warfare currently than we would be afraid of Germany being, simply speaking, able to conduct the war. Why? Because we are allies. There is nothing more to add to that. Germany is to us what Poland was to Ukraine if in case anything happens actually to Polish security. We need strong German armed forces that would be capable of securing also our borders and coming with support when we will be fighting at the front line. Simply speaking. When it comes to the nuclear sharing, honestly speaking, it is not about Poland acquiring the nuclear bomb. It is about actually being a part of the nuclear sharing program that is a part of NATO. For some reasons, this is a long discussion. France does not participate in nuclear sharing, so there is a very small amount of a cooperation that could be done on the Weimar Triangle level, in my opinion, in that regards. France is out of these arrangements. They have a very independent nuclear capabilities that they don't want to be a part of NATO capabilities. To some degree, this is a very complex story, maybe for a different discussion. However, and Germany is, of course, possess those capabilities because of the US warheads that are placed in the German territory, on the German territory. So this is rather actually a discussion between Poland and the US, plus Germany to some degree, and all the other allies that are members of the nuclear sharing program, because they also have to agree for that. From the Polish point of view, it is, I would say, profitable to acquire at least training in that regards, to acquire the capabilities for our F-35s that will be deployed to Poland very soon to operate within the nuclear sharing program. We understand, however, the political, let's say, doubts that may arise in some countries. Let me put it that way. But we also think that this is actually a very good cause to discuss once again and to assess the idea behind the NATO-Russia Funding Act that still exists, that NATO countries still feel that they are obliged to comply with, whereas Russia does not do it, and in a very obvious and very visible way, it actually Russia is doing anything to undermine this legal act that is actually not worth even a paper that is written on currently, at least from our Polish perspective. So it's not only for the nuclear sharing, but rather for actually rediscussing if we should revoke the NATO-Russia Funding Act, that it is worth at least this statement and this discussion, let me put it that way. And when it comes to also because the first question was related to the conscription, of course, this is very problematic in many European countries. Not many politicians, if any, actually is willing to go into that discussion, because the public has a very clear view on that, not very favorable. But I guess something which has been opened in Poland recently, and it is also happening in Sweden, in Scandinavian countries, and I suppose it should be also done in Western European countries, to at least try to open the discussion via starting a completely separate debate on the civil defense. And the training system related to that could be actually something that is less politically problematic and could come with a support and with a completely different approach, changing the approach of the people when it comes to their obligations related to the defense issues.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to close. We're right on time right now. I just want to say to the public that our speakers here will hopefully stay with us for a little bit, so maybe we can discuss a little bit about your question regarding the circumscription and the military woman force in the military. Because I have one last question that I don't want to miss, even if we are a little bit getting over time. I would like really just 30 seconds. What is your preferred future scenarios in terms of military spending, protection of the eastern flank, and NATO accession? Start.
All right. My preferred scenario on military spending, it needs to go through the roof, of course. I'm not going to give you any concrete numbers, but committing to a 2% target is not realistic considering all the scenarios that might be possible with the US elections and so on, with Russia probably getting Chinese military support in the near future. So it needs to be considerably above that. My preferred scenario for the Weimar Triangle would be for it to be a mechanism for the diffusion of reality into the German defense decision-making process, right? That is something that it is currently not doing, but may still be doing in the future. And overall, if we look at the wider Polish, German, French cooperation, there is a lot of potential there. If I may address the conscription question just for 10 seconds.
10
the thing
seconds.
is, yes, we do have a personnel problem. However, we need to prepare to deal with situations that may arise tomorrow in Narva, for example, right? And if we were to introduce conscription now, we would have to use scarce professional soldiers to train conscripts, taking them out of their units, rearranging the furniture while the house might start to burn at any moment. Not a good idea right now. What we should be looking at is reserve systems. We have highly trained professional soldiers leaving the forces all the time. They might be interested in reserve duty. Currently, the German system doesn't even know about those people, where they are, how to call them, how to contact them, what they could do, because we essentially got rid of our reserve system with the... Some of it is there, but it's negligible.
Right.
If we really wanted to have personnel for emergencies, we should look at that, not at conscription.
Right. Protection of the eastern flank in NATO?
Yes, more of everything.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Bart?
What I would say is, of course, the issue of sustainability of military spending that we haven't raised yet, and I suspect that for especially Eastern European countries, this is something which is very important. Let me put it that way: the eastern flank of NATO is also the eastern border of European Union in the majority of its territory. We are spending right now over 4%, trying to reach out to 5% in the very near future. When it comes to the military spending, this is a vast amount of the budget of the country. Of course, anyone would prefer to spend this money on healthcare, on education, on many other issues. But this is the times we're living through, and unfortunately, we cannot spend it on those important parts of the budget. But we have to spend it on acquiring the military abilities. But this also means that we are actually spending money in order to preserve European way of life, in order to preserve the joyful life of people in the streets of Paris, in their cafes, or in Berlin, or in Munich, etc., etc. Which means that I suppose that actually some of those spending should be Europeanized to some degree, because the amount of money that the Central Eastern Europe is spending right now on military purposes is simply speaking, I don't know if it's sustainable in the longer term, whereas actually countries that are also member states of European Union will be profiting from that to some degree. So I suspect that this might be a discussion that will be opened at some point. Very problematic, very controversial, I suppose, as always with the with sharing of the financial burden. But yes, that will be one of the things related to the future of the eastern flank of NATO.
Thank you so much. Well, the last words for Dennis.
Really briefly, so on Weimar Triangle, I would say that I would love to see this talking, let's put it this way, the possibility to talk between these three countries evolving. and to have new possibilities of cooperation. And just recently it was mentioned that it was on 22nd, I believe, of May, there was this meeting of the 3 foreign ministers of 3 Weimar countries. And one of the decisions and propositions I was really happy to read in the declaration that these 3 countries aim to increase cooperation in terms of fighting disinformation and malign influence from foreign states. In my opinion, it is the axis on which both three countries can focus and start cooperating right now without any other preconditions or looking for excuses or saying that it's quite difficult or whatever. In future, who knows, maybe Weimar Triangle will become the coalition of will if something happens. As for the NATO expansion, I would say yes, Ukraine should become NATO member state, and I'm happy that in France we had the change of heart, and currently we support Ukraine's NATO membership. And I believe the fact that in 2008, when things didn't happen as they should have happened, it was one of the reasons why Russia allowed itself to attack Georgia and then attack Ukraine in 2014. It was our weakness to be afraid of Russian threats. And the third issue, it was related to?
NATO Eastern Flank.
NATO Eastern Flank. Obviously, we've seen Poland suffered and Lithuania suffered in 2020 from a huge hybrid attack from Russia and Belarus. Using the migrants from mostly Iraq, Afghanistan, and this part of the world. And I believe Poland acted really well, even though there were some political persons criticizing Poland. So I believe the Frontex should be reinforced in order to reinforce the Polish borders, because Polish borders are also the European Union external borders. I believe that we should come to an somehow agreement, maybe in the framework of the Weimar format, to deploy Franco-German and Polish troops somewhere, maybe in Lublin, because the Poles have, for instance, with the Ukrainians and Lithuanians, the Polish-Lithuanian Ukrainian brigade. This kind of issues could be very interesting, and I would love to see this.
That's a wonderful note of the end of this incredible panel. Romain had to leave, unfortunately, because of his work, but I thank you so much for being here, for your time online. Bart, I wish you a very good weekend, and here in Munich, we will think of you and talk a little bit more about all these issues tonight. Here in Munich, we will have now a networking and some glasses of Sekt, German Prosecco. And we hope to continue these discussions. And with that, I would like to remind you, change of hearts is the most important thing we have right now. Thank you very much.